Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't think we have any additions and changes to the agenda. Is that right, Jim?
Nothing came to me, no.
Okay. So we have approval of the minutes from September 10th. They looked okay to me. Does anybody else have any revisions?
Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Brian.
Right.
Nobody has any revisions. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move it, Mary.
Nope.
I don't know who was first.
I don't
Laura,
care.
you can take that one. Artie, you first.
Sure.
Dan, you want to second it?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meetings are approved. Now we have, where's my agenda? The financial statements, which were mailed by Jim.
Correct. They should have
Morning.
received them in email today. Those were the August financials. We're still running about 30 days or so behind. I mean, Pat Wortley is coming up to speed still upstairs, and things are running very well. We're just running a little bit behind in our reporting, that's all. But all the financials and everything are moving just fine. If you look at the financial report that went out, we're running about 2% over budget year to date over where I'd like to be. This is due to some upfront consulting expenses and some from unanticipated expenses for the year. Additionally, we're going to be incurring some IT upgrade expenses that the pandemic has blessed us with. We need to upgrade to a cloud server, as well as increase our VPN and internet capacity here on site. So that might drive my overage a little bit higher as well. It's not really anything to be concerned about. At the end of last program year, I was significantly in the black. I want to say $55,000 to $65,000 extra unspent last year. So I have surplus I can dip into if I'm overspent by a little bit this year. All it will require is a UPWP amendment. Problem is I won't know exactly when to do that until the financials catch up with everything. So it might have to be the kind of thing that's done retroactively at the end of the year. We've done that at least once before. It's not a problem. New York State DOT is very on top of telling me when I'm over budget. So, but in any case, it's not, we won't be over budget in the sense that it's money we don't have. It's just money that I haven't put into the line item to be spent. That's all. Any questions on the financials or where we stand with anything?
Nope, except your budget is still intact, fully intact, hasn't been impacted by COVID.
My budget is still intact, fully, surprisingly so. And under the continuing resolution, we're fine. I mean, Congress can always change its mind. You watch Washington these days, like everybody else, it's a little crazy over there right now. They can, who knows what's going to come out of Washington, D.C. at any moment in time. But at the moment, everything's working just fine.
Okay, good. Fingers crossed.
Exactly.
All right, we'll move on to the UPWP status report.
Sure. There's two documents that were sent out to you in preparation for today's meeting. One is the 6-month comprehensive summary for SMTC. That is April through September. That's a required reporting to New York State DOT and to the Federal Highway and Federal Transit Authority. The other is our monthly report for the month of October. I'm just going to highlight some of the items that have occurred in the month of October. The other item is there for your leisure reading. So in general, the fall 2020 newsletter is at the printers right now and should be in your hands before Thanksgiving. As I mentioned, we're in the middle of an IT migration so that we can improve our remote access as well as on-site security. For public participation, we are in the middle of revising our public participation plan, and we'll have to have that adopted by policy committee. That'll likely not happen until after April in the new program year, though we have started on rewriting it now. It's a couple of rationales behind it. One is we're engaging the public in ways right now that wasn't originally envisioned when we wrote our public involvement plan. Additionally, our new representatives from Federal Transit Authority have told us that if we don't revise certain things in our public participation plan, we're going to fail our certification. So we're not because we're doing anything wrong, just because they're changing their requirements and expectations at the MPO level. So we're just going to get ahead of the game. We have a fall 2021 certification scheduled, so about a year from now. So in preparation for that, we're trying to have a bunch of documents updated to be sure that we don't fall in non-compliance in any area. As I mentioned, under the federal transportation legislation, we're operating under a continuing resolution right now. Hopefully, once the election silliness is behind us, we can have a new transportation bill in place. For data collection, the only data collection we're still doing for this season is finishing up our pavement rating. We have the city pavement 100% complete. Almost all of Onondaga County is complete. The challenge is small portions of Madison and Oswego County and trying to get those done before the snow flies. We're optimistic, but that depends on lake effect snow, shall we say. We'll see. For UPWP development, you all should have received a notice that went out that we are not issuing a call letter for new projects for the coming program year. I have a full program that we programmed last year. We kind of did it with the idea that we were programming more than 1 year's worth of projects at the time. We kind of knew it ahead of time. And we do this often where we program 2 years worth of things. I do have some existing, I'm going to call it block funding. So if there's a special item that the city or the county needs or in the state, there are categories that I can take care of small projects for you. The city and the county have both leveraged that a lot over the past couple of years. So don't be afraid to come ask for something. If I don't have any money to do it, I'll be honest with you and tell you. But usually I can find money to do something for the city, the county, central, or the state if you come with any requests. Happy to do it, but just no full-blown big-scale projects. If you have one that comes up that you think we really need to do, we'll have to juggle and probably delay a project that's on our work program right now if that project takes precedence. For geographic information systems, we've been doing a lot of support for the county's Empire State Trail project that they're doing. We have a lot of work is done for that, as well as we compiled a network of speed limit data in a GIS data set for Onondaga County DOT at their request and delivered that. For bike ped planning, as you know, we completed our 2020 bike map. It's a little hard to distribute in a pandemic. We brought it to some of the bike shops and whatnot, but usually we go to a lot more meetings where we hand deliver it to people. So I actually have a surplus of the hard copies sitting around. If you'd like a box of them, please let me know and I'll drop them off to you or any place you can think of, because it's a little harder to distribute hard copy materials in a pandemic. Under NPO regional planning initiatives, again, we're working with SOPA on Empire State Trail, and we thought our work was pretty much wrapped up with that. They came back to us recently and asked us to help them with some visual aesthetics in the end product. So we're going to employ some desktop publishing techniques and kind of improve the visual layout of their plan. That should happen in the next 2 months, assuming that Dan and company are happy with what we give them first time around. Don't come back for too many revisions. For the long-range plan, we completed that. That is adopted, as you all know. We just received yesterday the delivery of the hard copies for that. Normally, I would hand them out to you in person at today's meeting, but I'll have to get them to you another way. They're good for the next 5 years. Under the joint TMC co-location project, we had an initial meeting with New York State DOT and FHWA on some possible paths forward with that project. We have another meeting scheduled tomorrow just with Region 3 to discuss that. There's a couple different things that are possible with that. I'm not entirely sure what direction we're going to be taking with that right now. The DOME traffic management plan, that's later on today's agenda. Several studies are underway and with active SAC meetings being scheduled. They include the Tuscarora Road Study, US Route 11 Mattydale Study, Village of Skaneateles Pedestrian and Safety Study, and the Manlius Village Center Study. Those are all on schedule and on track and moving along just fine. The Syracuse Sidewalk Planning Study, we had delivered our pilot project to the city and asked them if they would like to take it over now, and we were told no. They'd like us to continue our efforts in doing that again next year, since they don't have the ability to staff it up like they were hoping for. They like other entities have encountered staff reductions, so their ability to take it over for us has not occurred. They asked us to continue doing what we did this current year, next year, which would be a similar level of data collection effort with summer interns and staff work here to compile it for the city with the hopes that they can take it over the year after that. I can fit that into my work program at the existing staffing and work levels that we have, so I told them we should be able to do that without a problem. The City of Syracuse Safety Assessment Project is on target for completion this program year. And under TIP development and maintenance, we just kicked off the new federal fiscal year October 1st, and New York State DOT has been prioritizing their projects for this year, and hence we have a bunch of tip amendments later on in the agenda today that we will get to later on. As part of that. Any questions on where we are with any of our activities? I'll happily get into the details.
Any questions? I'm good. Thank you, Jim. And then the semi-annual report is just a synopsis of everything for the last 6 months.
Correct. That's just an informational item. I have to submit that to the feds and the state, and I'll just give that to you folks as a, so you can have it all in one place and see what we've been up to for the past half a year.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no questions on the UPWP status report, I don't believe there's any old business. We'll go to the big packet of tip amendments.
Yes. Mario, can you share your screen, please? I sent this out in today's email. Hopefully you all got that in time for today. If not, just look at your screen there. This is to try and help you make sense of the large quantity of tip amendments before you today. What you have there is the numbers in the boxes are the project identification numbers, and the arrows show which projects are giving money and which projects are taking money. So whether basically a donor project or a recipient project. I don't think anyone wants to hear me read through the details of 12 tip amendments. I'm just going to go through a brief summary, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk about them all, since they're all state tip amendments. So we have 12 amendments, 10 from New York State DOT, 2 from the Thruway Authority. They're broken down as 1 new DOT project, 4 delay of phase projects, 2 DOT, 2 Thruway, 3 advancement of phases for New York State DOT, 3 cost increases for DOT, and 1 that's a project combination and cost increase for New York State DOT. All these projects that are the New York State DOT's Onondaga Lake Parkway project is being moved from the current federal fiscal year out a year due to the fact that they haven't been able to advance that with the COVID restrictions on hosting public events and whatnot. So that project has been used to fund all of these actions for the most part, and there's a little bit of other funding in there as well, but the lion's share of all this funding is coming from that project. Additionally, the governor's announcement on paving projects that came out about a week ago, we saw that press release. A bunch of new federal and state dedicated fund sources for paving across New York State for New York State owned roads has occurred. That's additional money being spent, not existing money that's in the SMTC area. In our area, the largest amount is going, from a federal dollars perspective, is going to the Route 481 from 81 all the way to Fulton. So that is the combined increased amendment item that I'm talking about. So that is additional money that's coming into our area. And that diagram on the screen that you're looking at is just a way to try and help make sense of this. Mark, do you want to jump in here? Because no one wants to hear me read 12 tip amendments.
Yeah, Jim, I can simplify this pretty quickly. First off, we have 2 projects that were delayed. Jim mentioned the Parkway project. A lot of that is back in May of this year, we had adjusted the design because we recognized we were not going to be able to hold the public hearing because of the COVID. We are committed to the project. We're moving the project forward, but COVID has prevented us from taking that next step in preliminary design. So this change is really moving out the construction. It's a reflection of that. We've had good coordination with the county on this project and some of the regulatory agencies. But there's still more work to do in preliminary engineering, and that public hearing is really the opportunity from the public to really be able to weigh in on the reduction down to 2 lanes. So we recognize the construction need to go out a year. The other project that we're delaying is Route 49 at Big Bay. And this is up by Constantia. It's a timber bridge. And last year in 2019, we had to do close to $750,000 worth of emergency work to that. It was failing. It is one of the worst bridges in SMTC area. And we don't have very many timber type bridges, but because of that, we did that with our emergency contractor. We have some life left in that bridge. So we've pushed that out a number of years. And what that did is that freed up some funding for these other projects. These other projects are on the tip. We're just choosing to accelerate some of them, get them started earlier. One of the things I think that Jim talks about, and I think county, city, and state are all proud of, is how well we've done with spending the funding that we've been given by the feds. This is maximizing the 100% funding that is given. We did have some shortfalls, but most of the projects, there's a number of the bridges right out front of the mall, some of those ramps that we want to put new decks on. We're just starting the preliminary design phases earlier and utilizing some of the funding from the Parkway and 49 over Big Bay. As it relates to the governor's announcement, Governor over the last few years has had a harsh winter paving program for the state that's been announced as part of the state budget. We're given the opportunity with the 481 for which we've come to the Planning and Policy Committee to break that project up into smaller projects because of a lack of funding. The treatments, the scope, two-course overlay, simple MBC on Interstate 481. Our project that exists on the program today was Route 31 to Route 264. Due to the announcement of some additional funding, we're able to accelerate other projects that were on SMTCs that we had just broken up into smaller sections. So we now will be able to, as part of that project, go all the way to Interstate 81. It's a big job, but as Jim mentioned, the funding is coming from outside this area. It's beneficial for Central New York to be able to spend additional $10 million and get this section paved. Also makes a lot of sense from the I-81 viaduct project to get this done. Of course, this is the northern terminus going out to the west. So that's what all this is about. It looks complicated, but it's really a reflection of moving a couple of projects out and maximizing the money.
Thank you, Mark. Now, one comment I did receive from a member agency, Mark, just to let you know of him, Mario and I are going to schedule a CPC meeting for December to address this discussion, is the fact that given the fact that projects are coming in kind of higher than what have been programmed on the tip right now with the current state of the world, there's not a lot of slush available for filling in those overages when the bids come in. So there was a request made that since the limited slush we have available right now is about 700,000 to 800,000 in NHPP. And there's a request made, is there a way we can trade off some of that NHPP for flex/urban money? So we're going to take a look, and Mario, I think, reached out to Katie already to see, is there any state projects in this mix here or anything that we could sub out NHPP for some of the urban or flex money so that we can keep in reserve a little flex or urban or some of those overages that might occur on the city or county projects that are likely to probably only be eligible for the flex or urban resource.
Okay, that sounds good, Jim. I look forward to that conversation. I mean, we typically try not to have dual fund sources as best as possible, just to carry the one, and we'd be supportive of that.
Thank you.
And Mark, there is one new project. Is it 380518? Is that an urgent project? Is that why we're putting it on the tip now?
So the 380508 is a signal contract, and we do signal contracts every year. This is to address two signals within SMTC's area, and that's what the addition is. I think it was listed on the tip amendments. I can't remember which ones they were, but we typically do 6 to 8 signals every year. And so they occur within SMTC's area and outside of. So this is just adding 2 signals that are being proposed for replacement within the city. I mean, within SMTC's area.
Yeah, one of them is Route 11 at Route 20 in Lafayette, and the other one is 7th North and Luther Ave in Salina.
Okay. So you progress the design with your own funds and you're adding the project to the tip for the construction phase?
Yes. That's to be delivered later in this next federal fiscal year. So I'm not sure how far we've progressed the design. I would have to check on that, Mary. Unless John knows. John's on the line.
Not sure. I'm looking at the tip table now.
Excuse me.
Bless you. All right. Any other questions on the tip amendments?
So Mary, I just found the PS&E for that job is June 24th, 2021. So we have not started the final design work on that at this time.
Okay.
This is Dan. I have kind of a stupid question maybe. But if we take money out of the Parkway project and we still want to do it, how do we put money back in there?
It's being reallocated in next year.
Okay,
These projects from next year are being advanced to this year, and then the Parkway project is being pushed off to next year. That's all.
okay.
And there's funds available next year to absorb that project?
Yeah, from the swap. We're swapping, we're advancing.
Oh, yeah,
we're advancing
okay.
things to this
Oh,
year, and it's freeing up money next year.
Yeah.
We're just shuffling the deck of cards.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, any further questions on the tip amendments? And then there's a couple throughway authority amendments, right?
There are two throughway amendments. Mara, you want to speak to those? Or not?
Yeah,
You're on mute, Mario.
yeah. So from what we've heard and what we're aware based on conversations with main office is just that the Thruway Authority was unable to get to this paving work this past federal fiscal year due to their large effort with the cashless tolling system that they're putting in place. So they had recommended that the construction phase just be delayed. It's funds from outside the SMTC area, so there's no offsets that are necessary or that impact any of our local planning dollars, the local capital dollars. So it's just a basic delay of the construction phase to next year.
Okay. So it doesn't impact any of our funding?
No.
Okay.
No, we can't spend that if we wanted to. Only them.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Can I have a motion to accept these tip amendments as a single motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, Brian, second.
This is Mark, I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. So I'll sign these tip amendments and scan them back to you.
Thank you. Mario sent you a revised one that had a typographical error in the first ones that went out. You can take sign the ones that just went out to you now. The same dollars, just the different. There was just a typo error in it.
Okay, will do. All right. Federal fiscal year capital funding report.
Yep. Mario, could you share your screen to that item, please? All right, so we've shared this with you at least 1 year in the past. What we're going to try and do here is kind of talk about how successful were we last program year, which ended on September, at the end of September, in terms of obligating all of the money that we had. So we're going to kind of walk through a few key pages of this report. The rest of it you can read at your leisure. Somewhere you want to advance a little bit? So this page is good if you can zoom out a little bit. This shows how much money we started the year programmed with, which was 43.35 million, but we ended up actually programming 64.31 million in the end. That means over 20 million additional dollars were brought into our area that was beyond the traditional SMTC funding sources that we had. Basically, New York State DOT was able to bring in additional funds from Albany, basically to expend inside the SMTC area, giving us the ability to spend more money than we otherwise would have. And advance to another page of interest. Okay, this just basically shows, this kind of goes to the conversation we were having a little bit earlier on the amendments. The vast majority of the funds that we have available to us are NHPP, which is the highest utilization of highest use roads for it, basically the interstate systems, things of that nature, which means a lot of the secondary road systems are not eligible for the biggest fund pot that we have. If you look at the, most of the city and the county projects tend to be flex or urban. If you look at those two lines in the bar graph, you see that they're substantially smaller. So 52% of all of the funds that we have programmed in the area are NHPP, which I can never remember. National Highway Performance, I can never remember what it stands for.
National Highway Performance Program. And if I can just add to that, Jim, this is consistent with all federal fiscal years of our capital program, not just last year's 1920 year. The vast majority of our combined funds for our 4-year or 5-year TIP come from the National Highway Performance Program fund source.
That's the way the last transportation bill, actually the one before it, were written. We're hopeful that the next one will be written more flexible to allow for some prioritization of those funds on some other aspects of the system, because it's very limiting. Right, it limits the number of roads that it can be used for right now. And as you can probably noticed, New York State DOT's facility gets the lion's share of those under that current paradigm, which you could argue it's good, it's bad, whatever, but that's just the way it is. That's the way the legislation is put together right now under the current transportation bill.
Hey, Jim, I'd like to just add on that discussion, the primary system, the NHPP system, that nothing, I mean, that's good that they are putting in a lot of money, but I think the real statement is there's not sufficient funding in the secondary system.
Correct.
And when you look at just DOT system, it's like 66% of our system is on the secondary system. So yes, everybody knows we own the interstate systems, but we have a lot of roads, as does the city and the county, also on the secondary system. So when Congress and others pass that transportation bill, the secondary system is so critical, and this is by far the most competitive during TIP update is the secondary system, because we all have roads that are falling to pieces.
Absolutely. And Mariah, you want to advance that a little bit? All right, so this is a good page. Now this is where we all have to say a big thank you to New York State DOT here. We were able to obligate as an agency and as our member agencies 99% for the past federal fiscal year. That is amazing considering the state of affairs that have occurred in this past year. And if you look at those little bar graphs that you see on the chart there, you'll see that almost all of that money, with the exception of New York State DOT, was obligated in the last month or two. That means New York State DOT, I don't know how much overtime your staff had to put in, Mark, But you guys work to get all of that stuff obligated in the last basically 45 days of the year for almost all of those projects for the county and the city. And that's a lot. It was a lot of work, but very successful. I mean, the end result of that is all of the money we had available to be spent in our area, we did. And that's really important, especially as the economy starts to spin out of control, to make sure that we're investing money locally. As we all know, there's a lot of spin-off of transportation investments in our community. When you spend $1 on transportation, that money tends to stay in the community to a certain extent. So that's good for us as a community to maximize our investment. We're not leaving unspent dollars on the table. That tiny bit of money we did leave unspent, that was the Thruway Authority, right, Mario?
Correct. Yeah, it was delayed on the STIP, but we were not informed of that delay, so we were unable to make our local adjustment in time. But I guess technically we're 100% because that's outside money.
So yeah, so it's quite the feat actually, and I think that everyone did their part to get these things across, but for DOT to have lifted that many projects across the finish line that last month is pretty impressive. So that's good.
Yeah, I'd like to thank DOT. They helped us get to the finish line on our interconnect project. So thank you, Mark, and your team, Rich, and everyone else.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Doug Mills too. I know he's not here, but Mark and John, thank you.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, it's really important. I mean, I remember back when I first started here at the SMTC, we would have years where we would have percentages obligated that were in the 20s, 23%, which was insane to leave that much money uninvested in our community. So now that we're, past several years, we've come either at 100% or just about 100%. So it's really it's something that I think it's really important to our community. It's really important for me here at the agency to make sure we do it as much as we can. And that's why we have those CPC meetings, and we're going to have one in December to kick off this next year, just to make sure we can keep this trend continuing. I forget, Mario, is there another page you wanted to highlight today on this? Oh, okay. Yeah, this one just shows the tip modifications over the course of the year. Basically what you'll see is that we had a lot of tip changes the last quarter of the federal fiscal year, which I think part of what we're doing today is New York State DOT, by thinking ahead of time, I think is pre-planning for that and kind of front-loading a lot of that for our amendments that are happening today instead of waiting for later in the program year to do that. Anything you want to add on that one, Mario?
I'm just going to scroll up a little bit into the obligation, which is just a different look. So this is obligation percentages for all sponsors, as the last one that we were just talking about was the individual. But kind of similar, goes hand in hand with the adjustments to the program in the last third or quarter of the program. A fair number of the overall obligations themselves are taking place at the tail end. So I think whatever you guys can do as individual sponsors to keep things moving forward, it's all the better to continuing our amazing percentages that we've had over the past several years for obligation.
Thank you. Scan on through. We at least want to hit up the last page so we can at least show that Centro as well obligated 100% of their money for the year as well. I don't want to leave them off of the table as well. And they actually, just like Highway, ended up doing a higher amount of money at the end of the year than we actually had at the beginning of the year. So all around a very good year from a capital investment perspective for our community. So excellent. Don't always want to have meetings of bad news, right? Sometimes you want to be able to say we all did a great job. So especially in a year like 2020, which is quite the year. So that's just an informational item for everybody, just to keep you all in the loop.
All right. I like the report. It's good information. to share with others.
Yeah, I think so. It's a way to be able to digest stuff that is otherwise, well, it can be very dry, but it's really critical for our community, I think.
It's a good high level overview so people can see where our money's spent. So thank you for putting that together. So the last item is the Dome Traffic Management and Events Strategic Plan RFP.
Yep, I had sent out and mailing as its own mailing item, the summary of what this process was. I didn't quite have it written up in time for the mailing. Hopefully you all got that. I think it was sent out Monday, I believe, if memory serves me right. So I'm just going to highlight what the process was, and then we can have an open discussion on it. So we published an RFP, and on August 17th, we had expressions of interest that were due by August 28th. We received 9 proposals from 9 teams. They were Barton and LaJudas, Bergman, Creighton Manning, Dunn Engineering, IBI, JMT, Kimley Horn, Stantec, and Transpo Group. We created a review committee, consisted of Syracuse University, the Syracuse Police Department, the City of Syracuse, Centro, and New York State DOT, in addition to SMTC staff. The committee kind of ranked all of those 9 proposals on a scale of 1 to 10 in the following categories: experience and qualifications with similar work, qualifications of the team as a whole, and demonstrated understanding of the RFP. Those rankings were submitted and received from DOT, Centro, City of Syracuse, SU, and as long as SMTC. The proposal committee met on October 5th, and from those, we were able to narrow it down to 4 firms to bring in to interview. They were Bergman Associates, Kimley Horn, Stantec, and Creighton Manning. We attempted to check references of all 4 of those firms. We were able to successfully check them with all except for Kimley Horn, which the only person that they put down that we were able to get a hold of was Mark Frechette, and we didn't want to call Mark on that because we kind of assumed what Mark was going to say, and otherwise he would tell us don't hire him because I don't like him. So we didn't actually make that phone call with you, Mark, but we did call everybody else. We were unable to reach any other Kimley Horn's references, though we tried multiple times. And all the references we did reach were very positive. So we scheduled consultant interviews for those 4 firms, and they were all consecutive in one giant 4-hour Zoom meeting that I don't want to repeat anytime soon, on October 22nd, where they had a 15 to 20 minute presentation, a 20 to 30 minute open Q&A. And then the review committee ranked the firms with either a -1 as we didn't really prefer them based on the quality of that interview, a 0 where we're kind of neutral, or a +1 that we did prefer them. And you were allowed to give the same ranking to multiple firms. If you thought everyone did a great job, you could give everyone a +1. If you thought everyone did a bad job, you give them all a -1. So we took all that, we accumulated it, and it was actually pretty stark. Creighton Manning had a -1, Bergman had a -4, Kimley Horn had a +6, and Stantec had a +8. So the review committee met on October 28th, and we very quickly or easily were able to take that 4 and narrow it down to the 2 that scored the highest in unanimity. That is Kimley Horn and Stantec. And then we, as a basis for our discussions, kind of queried the group for was there an existing preference from those 2? And there was unanimity amongst everyone that Stantec's proposal was superior. There was a higher comfort level that they were using their use of big data to help calculate origins and destinations of where people are coming from to access the dome. Using cell phone tracking data and whatnot is going to be key for being able to do this correctly. Kimley Horn was not going to use any of that in their proposal at all. They had a very different approach to it, which we might have worked just fine. They actually have quite a bit of experience. Kimley Horn has quite a bit of experience doing projects like this, which is why they made it so far in the process. They just had a very different approach, but everyone on the review committee had a much higher comfort level with Stantec's data-driven approach for that. But we all decided that if for some reason we can't enter into a consultant agreement with Stantec, that Kimley Horn was a fine firm to enter into as a fallback if the agreement doesn't go to Stantec for some reason under the contract negotiations. So that's as brief as I can make that summary, sorry. And I guess I can answer questions about how it all went down and where we are and why we're doing this and why we're moving forward. So,
Did Populous and Highland Planning, I haven't heard of either of those firms, which doesn't mean anything negative. Do
Highland,
they have a large quantity of the work, or is it mainly Stantec?
Stantec is doing the lion's share of the work. Highland Planning is a small public involvement firm out of Rochester. We've dealt with them a lot for things that, on smaller scale public outreach. They're they do a lot of local comp plans, town plans, things of that nature from the public involvement perspective. They do a lot of work in upstate New York for the most part, is where they operate out of. I think that their inclusion probably was part of meeting the desired DBE requirement of the proposals.
And Populous, what are they?
I don't have that in front of me right now. Mario, do you
Okay.
remember them?
They are more so focused into the design aspects of this particular project, along with wayfinding activities. And they also have had past work that they've done for the university themselves on some prior stadium and building design and analysis projects that they've had. So they're a pretty large design engineer consulting firm.
And the Stantec, not that it's really appropriate in this particular case, but is it local Stantec people and people from, was it Rochester?
Yeah, the project will be managed out of Rochester, but they're drawing on their national team. They have people from all over that are involved in it, but the project will be managed out of their Rochester office.
Not that we're going to be having any dome events that they could come and witness. So I guess it's not really all that relevant.
Yeah, that was a big part of our conversations, which is existing data collection for this project is probably not going to be particularly appropriate. So we're going to have to utilize creative data collection methodologies, which is why our Stantec's utilization of big data of tracking cell phones for the past couple of years of dome events actually would be very useful, and we think a very good approach for this, so that we can get the proper origins and destinations. Where are people starting their trips from? Where are they parking their cars at? That's really one of the best ways to do that, in our opinion, and they showed a really strong mastery of that ability.
Okay, good. All right, anybody have any questions on this?
Yeah, this is Dan. I looked at this and I remember when we initiated this. Well, first of all, I get why we're doing it. I mean, it makes sense. And I know the city and the police department and everything, needs it done. And I do want to just raise the question of, are we really at the point we thought we were going to be at when we were going to award this contract? Because I don't think, in my impression, my gut tells me that 81, the project isn't where we thought it was going to be. And also, I think, Mary, you just pointed out a good point that without, dome events going on, is this a timely thing right now, or should it be maybe a year or two from now?
Yep. Excellent questions. We had SMTC expected the I-81 project to be further along by now as well. And I've had that conversation with Mark Frechette. So I am disappointed that wasn't able to move along further. I think the main reason for that is they can't have their public hearing process in a COVID environment correctly. So that's what's kind of holding that up right now, because the NEPA process is FHWA is not being very clear on whether DOT can hold a hearing virtually and have it count. You can hold a hearing virtually, but does it count to satisfy all the requirements? They're not saying, they're not giving a yes on. So that's part of I think the holdup why that isn't been able to move forward at a faster rate. Could we hold on this? I'm going to be very frank. If we hold on this, the money that's coming from this is not SMTC's normal funding source. It is a special pot of funding that is coming from New York State DOT under what's called SPR money, State Planning and Research Funds. If I don't spend it in this time frame, it'll go back to the state. There is no guarantee that in a later date I will get that money back. Doesn't mean I won't, but I can't tell you that I will. I can tell you that I don't have the money to do this project on my own. It's a $400,000 project that requires special expertise from a consulting group. And I don't have that ability on my own to do that. So if we were to not do it now, I myself can't guarantee that the money would be available to, maybe the state could maybe, but I can't guarantee that we'd be able to do it.
And then this study would be based upon the design and the generic environmental impact statement as it is right now.
Yeah, the study is set so that it doesn't deal with the current existing condition, and it does not deal with the construction condition. It only deals with the post-construction community grid condition as defined by New York State DOT. So, DOT will at some point in time give that information to the selected consultant in terms of their best understanding of what the post-construction condition would be, and they would start putting that that access plan together that way.
And that plan, I mean, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I know it's the preferred option, but it's not set in stone at all. So this plan could be completely blown out of the water in a year or two.
That's possible. It's possible.
And we'd have to do it all over again.
I guess what I would, yeah, I guess what I would say, just a couple things. First, the SPR funding, that is federal funding, and New York State gets a limited amount of statewide planning research type funding. Back when the city broached the concept back in 2019, Jim through SMTC and I submitted for some of that funding. And so this is funding really from the previous transportation bill that was put into place. I don't know if the new transportation bill will have SPR funding. I don't know the availability of funding in the future related to that. Congress did pass an extension for 1 year. That really doesn't relate to SBR funding. So we got in the appropriate time. The money has been reserved for this project. I will tell you that there are a number of other planning research type projects throughout the state, special projects that are going on that also competed for the funding. And Jim, I don't know if you know off the top of your head the amount, but it was pretty substantial, right?
$400,000 we got for this project. Yes.
400,000, yeah.
400?
So that's the SPR side. As it relates to the project, regardless of what happens with the project, there's an issue at the Dome during events. And I think that everybody here on the phone recognizes that if Bruce Springsteen's there or Duke's coming in and there's a big time basketball, that Dome traffic management works because of the city police system. And they basically just turn the whole transportation system off. They get to every signal, the prime ones, to have the flow of traffic. So we have information on the no build. We have information, and we're carrying two build alternatives, the viaduct replacement and the community grid alternative. Yes, we've recommended the community grid alternative and understand that traffic related to that, but they're very different alternatives. So to your point, Dan, if the community grid were not to go forward and the work is to be done based on the community grid, community grid gives a lot more avenues for access to the hill, a lot more access to the Dome. You know, I can't answer the question of when we would lose the funding if this wasn't done, but the opportunity here, I think, in recognizing where the problems are up on the hill and getting 30,000 people to the hill and leaving, we could lose that opportunity if we didn't move forward.
I'll
So-
throw my 2 cents in too, which is on the bigger issue, which is my opinion, if we don't move forward with I-81 soon as a community, given the state of affairs with the economy in New York State, that we're going to lose that multi-billion-dollar investment entirely, and it'll be prioritized in an area of the state that will. And I'm worried about that. I'm worried that as a community, if we don't move forward with that soon, the state will find out other places to invest that money in New York State that will act quickly.
So, Mark, am I to understand that this study would help the current situation somehow? Is that what you were saying?
The current situation related to, well, the existing situation today is a little bit different
Right.
than it was February, pre-March. But it's really to try and take a look at the situation that occurs every time there's a big event at the Dome. Whether or not there's a number of things that are a part of the 81 project that under the community grid that would change travel patterns to the hill. The viaduct alternative would be similar to today, if we were to implement the viaduct alternative. So I think what ultimately the study will help is the results of the study is to really what countermeasures need to be developed to fix some of the problems that we have currently during Dome events. And I think that's regardless of the community grid, the viaduct, or the existing conditions. COVID's a game changer as to travel patterns. I mean, we're seeing major reductions in traffic volumes today than we saw in February. But when there's an event up there, there's a lot of problems from a transportation standpoint. Every one of us has probably been parked in their car for 45 minutes just trying to get off the hill. I really think that this doesn't hurt us from a project, 81 project. This is really to define some of the countermeasures and where some of the problems are to really help this situation in the future. And I think, I can't speak for the city, but I think that's what they're looking for as a result of this. Let's implement some new strategies that will help alleviate some of the issues associated with people accessing to the hill and leaving the hill.
But it is for the community grid solution. I'm going to be very clear about that. I mean, that's very clear in the scope. We don't have the resources to plan for all of the possible options. I mean, that would cost us a lot more money to plan for all of the options that are being studied. We are planning for just the one post-construction condition.
But you are saying that some of the, this study will help give us ideas for correcting some of the existing problems until the grid option is implemented, assuming it is implemented.
It absolutely would, because there are parts of it that are very applicable. I mean, right now they're working off a plan from 1981 or 1980, I forget which.
Yeah.
So that's pretty ancient, and there's no real documentation of where people are parking. Where those people that are parking there are coming from, and this plan is going to get us a much clearer understanding of the origins, the destinations of people that are coming to dome events, and how to best get them around. Not just accessing the hill, which is ideally what you're going to get from the 81 community grid, is how you get to the hill. This is also how do you get around on the hill area. And how do you get to your parking lot location? I mean, no one's generally going from their home to the carrier dome unless you live close enough to walk the entire trip. Generally, you're going from your home to a secondary location and then walking to the carrier dome. And then this is how do you access those various secondary locations on the hill? And yeah, there's whether you get off 690, 81, or and the community grid would be a little bit different. But then there's the moving around on the actual hill proper itself. The best way to move people around, should streets be all, turned off, turned all one way, reversed, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what's going to come out of the kind of recommendations that are come out of this. And in addition, where safety personnel should be established and put on site, what can be done through technology, what needs to be done through manual processes. It includes the delivery of actual physical handbooks to give the officers who are deployed the tools that they would need to direct traffic and public safety in the field. Having talked to SU's public safety and the city of Syracuse's public safety, this is something they really want.
So I mean, like, especially with the big data and kind of identifying all those things, it sounds like that's a bulk of the process here. And then at least a significant amount of it. And then that information can be used to adjust current practice.
Yeah, I mean, let's say,
Within the city.
kind of spin a hypothetical. Let's say we're getting through this process and the I-81 project takes a left turn, and instead of a community grid, it's something else as an alternative. Would this have to be altered a little bit to deal with that? Yes, I'm not going to lie and say it wouldn't. But would it have to be thrown out entirely? No. I think a lot of the building blocks would not have to be. It would be probably be okay, we did this, now how do we take this and then change it to fit the current decision? Would you say it'd be more efficient to not do that? It might be, but again, we have the money now. I don't want to, it might sound like a silly reason to do something, but.
Well, you know, a $3 billion project, I think you could squeeze another 400 grand out of it to do this later on, but
maybe
if everybody's willing to do it now, then I'm cool with it.
The one thing to remember though is New York State DOT as part of the 81 project doesn't have to plan for special events. They have to plan for the regular conditions for the road system. The special events, which are 30 to 40 times a year, does not have to be planned by New York State DOT as part of I-81. That's why this special event plan is being paid for out of a separate fund source. It's not being paid out of 81 money at all. It's being paid out of state planning and research money, because special events are not considered part of what 81 is planning for.
Okay.
What's the time frame for getting this done? Couple years?
Under 2 years from point of contract. Probably 18 to 24 months from point of contract left.
When does the money have to be spent by?
We have to start spending it this program year in order to keep that, so that before March 31st, I have to start incurring some costs according to Albany, is what they told me. So and then the PIN becomes active, and then it'll stay in there. That's what I was told. How long do we have to spend it entirely? I don't know. I would say a couple of years, but again, we're working off of some guesses because of a transportation bill that's expired. So based on the information we have, I would say a couple of years. As long as we start the expenditure now.
So could you execute the contract and get started in April 2021, but slow the process down so that there might be more definitive information down the road on I-81?
I think we could slow it down to a point before the consultant would say we need to pick it back up. At some point, they're going to say they need to revisit the cost for their proposal, because, you know, like a consultant firm, they reserve people, hours, time, etc. And they can usually handle project delays of, you know, months. But if we're asking them to delay it for, you know, 2 years, I would say they probably would say yes, because they wouldn't want to lose the contract, but they also would say we're going to revisit their cost proposal based on that as well. I would assume, based on my previous experiences with these kind of things. But if you're looking for a 3 to 6 month kind of pause, I would say you could probably do that at some point. Once you've engaged them and started to incur some costs, you could probably do that. That's my best guess.
And the data generation is going to be from cell phone data?
It's not all cell phone. It's cell phone and GPS data. In addition, they're going to use SU's season ticket holder data and their mailing database as well. But we know full well that most people, especially when you go into things like concerts and things, you know, we don't know. There are no season ticket holders for a Billy Joe concert, right? That's a one-off kind of thing. So the kind of thing is, where are these pockets of people coming from? What is their general approaches? And what percentage is coming from the north, south, east, west, that kind of thing. And looking at, it's amazing when you start looking at these cell phone data sets, what you can actually figure out. You can get down to a pretty micro-sized block of figuring out where people are starting their trips from, where they're ending them at. And just remember, when you're carrying that little toy in your pocket around town, people know where the hell you're going.
So Jim, they're going to be looking at historical data then?
That's correct. We're going to go back a couple of years. We're not going to use any data sets from COVID. It would all be pre-COVID data sets.
So what if the study was structured that 2021 is focused on the collection of the historical data, the review of that data, the explanation of what that data means, and then move into 2022 to get into, okay, we know the data, here's a plan based on the assumption of the I-81 grid approach. At least pushes off a year to hopefully get a little bit more definition on I-81.
Yeah, I think that if I approach a selected vendor and say, I'd like to engage you in a contract, but I'd like you to revisit your schedule a little bit. Usually when the time you say, do you want to sign this, is the right time to say, do you want to alter your schedule as well? But they'll generally say yes to both at the same time, right? And so, yeah, I think you're right. I think the time to have them alter that is before we sign the contract, and tell them we'd like to enter into a contract where we'd like you to modify your schedule to front load it with certain activities and back load it with other activities. I think we can do that to a point. Yeah.
I think that'd be good. In a $400,000 contract, I would expect even a firm like Stantec to be responsive and flexible.
Yeah, I think so. I think so as well. And for good or ill, I mean, Stantec was involved in the first phase of the I-81 study, so they're actually pretty well versed in it. They did do the Syracuse Transit Systems analysis that was the basis for our BRT study as well. So they're actually pretty plugged into a lot of this information in this. And so they're actually independent of their proposal. They actually have a lot of other qualifications that kind of are relevant for this as well.
That's good.
Jim, I just wanted to mention that I've been exposed to streetlights data, and I don't know if you talked to Stantec about utilization streetlights, but I've been pretty impressed.
Yeah,
the results and what they can tell you. And you can buy data going back 3-4 years ago and really figure out a lot of what you were talking about.
Yep. Yeah, the data purchase is about $30,000 to $60,000, depending on the size of the data you're looking for and the time frame you're looking for. And then it's how the hell do you analyze it? Because it comes as a mess, and it is quite a challenge to get in there. And I think that's one of the things we're paying for, is the expertise to dissect that in a meaningful way. I'm not positive. Mario, do you remember? I know that they're all melding in my mind with streetlight data. Was that Stantec, or was that one of the other firms that was going to use streetlight?
That was Stantec's usage. They've actually worked with Streetlight as the company on several projects throughout the country, so that they're familiar with the data vendor and the use of that data.
Okay, any other questions? Can I have a motion to hire Stantec for the dome traffic management study?
I'll move it. David?
Brian?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Lori, did you get the motion in the second?
Was Brian first and David second?
Reverse that.
First that.
Yeah, gotcha.
David first, Brian second. It was a little
Got it.
confusing for me too.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, No public comment, but anybody else have anything?
No, but just want to remind everybody, there is no public comment, but this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube within the hour of the conclusion of the meeting. So just make sure everyone's fully versed in all of that. You can via YouTube.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second, Brian. All right. Everyone be well. Wear your
Thanks, Brian.
mask.
Everybody.
Dude, thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Thanks, Jim and Lori.
Talk to you all soon.